Well, I've been debating about whether I should do this one or not, uh, but my son encouraged me today to go ahead and do it. And so today I thought I would tell you about reading, talk about reading primarily. Uh, when I was growing up, I didn't care much for books, and I had a time getting through uh, high school because I didn't like to read back then, and I was very good in grammar. I didn't have any problem with that because, as I think I told you, my grandparents were both grammar teachers, and I lived with them from age 4 to about 17, and I got my grammar corrected every day, all day long, and so I became an expert at that. But I didn't like to read. After I married, though, I began reading books, and I got really addicted to reading books. Uh, I've probably read, I don't know, thousands of books, I guess. But I became an avid reader. Uh, I would, at one point, I was reading 3 and 4 books a week. Uh, I read 100 books a year easily for many years, and maybe more than that, maybe 200 is in some years. I love to read. Uh, I need to tell you though, I wasn't a very good reader at first, but I think I was about 45 or so, and I took the Evelyn Wood speed reading course, and uh, that course quadrupled my reading speed. In fact, it was so fast. At the end of the course, we had our final exam was to read a 200-page book as fast as we could. And I found it difficult to turn the pages fast enough. That's how fast I could read. I read a 200-page book in about 20 minutes. And afterward, they gave me a test on what was in that book, and I made 98%. My retention was incredible. Many people do not understand speed reading. Uh, they think that you just skim over the words, but you don't. If you really know how to do it, you're taught how to do it correctly, and you're taught how to do it correctly, and you do that, uh, you can read. I see every single word. My lips don't move when I'm reading. Some people do because they don't read any faster than they can talk. Uh, but I do read fast, and I always have, and I still read probably somewhere between 700 and 1,000 words a minute now. But my retention is fantastic. It teaches you how to focus and not let your mind wander at all when you're reading. You stay right with what you're reading, and you never think about anything else as long as you're reading. And that's why you can read that fast. But anyway, uh, I still read at least one, sometimes 2 books a week, novels, just for the fun of it. And I don't spend much time reading because I do still read very fast. But when I was 12 years old, uh, my father, for my birthday, gave me my first Bible. It was a pretty thick thing. Uh, And I had only a New Testament before then. But at the age of 12, I got that Bible, and my father encouraged me to read the whole thing, from Genesis to Revelation. And so I began doing that at the age of 12. I have no idea how long it took me to get through it the first time. And much of the time I was calling words and I didn't understand a thing. I think that would be pretty common for people who've never read the Bible. I think there are very few people that can honestly say, I have read every single word in the Bible. Not even once. They can't say that. People have read in it, they've read around it, they've read about it, but they've never read the entire thing through. I know why people don't believe the Bible, and most people don't. And but I know the reason. The reason they don't believe it is because they don't want to. They don't want to know the Bible. They don't want to know anything about it. They're happy the way they are, and they're afraid that they may have to change their lifestyle a little bit. And so they're not interested in it at all. But I read the Bible through. Probably took me maybe a couple of years. I don't know. And in most Bibles, you have a daily reading schedule to read the Bible through in a year. Almost every Bible has one of those schedules. It was probably invented by some guy with a PhD. Sometimes I think PhD stands for phenomenally dumb, because that is absolutely the most stupid way to read a book that I've ever heard of. You don't read any book like that. A little in the back part of it and a little in the front part. No wonder people who follow that reading plan, I'm sure they don't have a clue what it says. They don't understand it at all, because you can't do that. Read like that and make heads or tails out of any of it. I don't believe. It's a big book. There's 66 books in that book. All Bibles have around 1,100 or 1,200 pages, and a book with 1,000 pages or so scares a lot of people. And it is a big book. There are over 750,000 words, more than 750,000 words, well over that number. Words in that book. And so people don't want to, they're afraid to read it. They think they can't, and all of that. But anyway, the truth is that with all those 750,000 plus words, if you read just 12 minutes every day, a little under 12 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, just continue reading 10 to 12 minutes a day, and you'll read it through in a year easily. Anyway, I began reading the Bible through, and I don't know, by the time I was 33, I probably had read it maybe twice, maybe 3 times. I'm not sure. I didn't keep a record of it at all. But when I was 33 in 1964, in January of that year, I decided that I would just set aside an hour every morning. I'd get up an hour earlier and I would read my Bible every morning. And I decided the easiest way to read it was just to go by the number of pages. I'm going to read 10 pages a day, just 10 pages a day. And so I started doing that. And I had an hour to do it in, and I found it didn't take me an hour to read 10 pages. I'll talk about that later, but and this was before I took the speed reading course. And so anyway, I began doing that. And what I found out was that by reading 10 pages of the Bible a day, I could read the entire Bible front to back in about 3.5 months. And I continued to do that. And so that the way it turned out, 3.5 months times 3 still leaves you with about a month and a half. And so you read almost half of the Bible again, a fourth time. And so I started doing that in 1964 in January, and I still do that today. I still read my 10 pages every day. But that was almost 59 years ago. And so reading the Bible 3.5 times a year for 59 years, it'll be 59 years at the end of this year. It's 58 right at the present, almost 59. We're getting close to the end of the year. And you multiply 58 times 3.5, and you'll get about 203 or 4. So since 1964, I've read the Bible more than 200 times. It never gets boring. I never lose interest in it. The more I read it, the more I understand it. And every time I read it, I learn more than I knew before. I see things that I didn't see before. And so you get a good deal of knowledge. I know pretty much what's in the Bible. I can tell you exactly what's in every book of the Bible off the top of my head. And I will tell you this, I do not believe that a person can read the Bible 100 times or even 50 times and not believe it. I don't think that's possible. Nobody has to prove the Bible to be right. It proves itself. And if you read it, it'll convince you that there's no way in the world that that book could have been written by men who were not divinely inspired. Couldn't happen. Approximately 40 men wrote the Bible over a period of 1,500 years. And many of them didn't even speak the same language. And so that's a remarkable thing. You get 40 scholars today to try to collaborate on a book, you'd have the awfulest mess you ever saw. It had to have been divinely inspired to make any sense. And so that's just plain logic. And so I would encourage you to read the Bible every day. and see what you think about it. It won't kill you. It'll do you good and no harm at all. And if you don't think you can read 10 pages a day, that's fine. After I got that speed reading course when I was in my mid 40s, it takes me about 25 to 30 minutes to read 10 pages. Sometimes if I get to studying it, it may take 35 or 40 minutes to get through it. I do underline and mark my Bibles. I highlight certain passages and I write notes in the margin about it. And that's the way I read it. But if you don't think you can read 10 pages a day, if you're not a very fast reader and you think that would take too much time, let me suggest to you that you cut it in half. Read 5 pages of the Bible every day. There are parts of it that are hard to plow through. I admit that. I understand that. I've been there and done it, so I know that some places are very difficult to read. But if you do that, the more you do it, the more you understand it. And it's not nearly as boring once you begin to understand what you're reading. But you won't understand it all the first time, I'm sure. It's too much to it. But if you'll read 5 pages every day, set aside a specific time of day and spend 5 minutes, read 5 pages, however long, probably take you 15 to 20 minutes. That shouldn't be too long to find time to read the Bible, 15 or 20 minutes a day. And 5 pages a day will take you through the entire Bible in just under 8 months, about 7.5 months. And so I thought I would talk to you about that. I'll read my Bible 10 pages every day. And this year, when I've got 12 different English translations, and I've read them all, in January of this year, I read the Revised Standard Version, RSV, and it was my 6th time to read that particular Bible. I used to not mark them when I read them, and someone asked me one time, how many times have you read the Bible? And I had no idea. And so from that point on, I began to document when I read a Bible. And here's the one I carry now. And you probably won't be able to see that. But from here up, those are the number of times that I've read this particular Bible. I finished my 10th reading, and I have the date marked when I start and the day I finished. And the last time I read this one was in 2005. But this one I've read 10 times. I have other Bibles that I've read 10 times. I've marked like that. And I have about 20 Bibles in all. There's one I haven't read at least once. And so I do believe the Bible. I believe it's true in every word. I do believe it is divinely inspired. And the translations don't make any difference. There are many words that mean the same thing. And so whichever one the translators choose, he's usually all right. We'll tell you something. That Revised Standard Version, RSV, well, it does not contain all of the verses that the old King James Version had. They left out 17 complete verses that were in the King James Bible of 1611. And the NIV, New International Version, left out 14 of those passages, and many partial passages have been left out of those. I did a study one time on those groups of men, scholars that got together and translated the Bible. Why did they leave them out? Well, basically, there are two Bibles in Greek. There are more than 5,000 Greek manuscripts. That's the original language of the New Testament. And the scholars that created the King James in 1611, about 80% of that it belongs to William Tyndale, who did an English translation. His was so good that they pretty well followed what he had written, and they to create a text to translate from, you have to take all of these 5,000 some odd manuscripts and put them together and analyze them, and then you develop from that what you think the original manuscript actually said. And you do that by reading all of those things and deciding that this one is more complete, or it's a better Greek copy, because they're all copies. There are no original manuscripts of the writers of the New Testament. They don't exist anymore. These are all copies. But from these, they developed a text. And in the 1800s, and that's another story, another group of scholars decided to make a new Greek text. And that Greek text that they used, they put together, they are the ones that left out those verses of the New Testament. They thought they didn't belong in there. And so they're the ones that left them out. And so that your Bible translations that use the Aaron Nestle text, Greek text, will leave out those verses or bracket them or some way to show that they didn't think they belong in there. But the Bibles that are translated from the received text, the text that was used in 1611, if you use the received text, they'll all be in there. There are translations that are taken from the received text. The one I use is the New King James. That's the one I use. It's as accurate to the Greek as any of them. There's none any more accurate. There are some that think the American Standard is more accurate, but it doesn't really read that different from the New King James. if you study Greek, and you'll know that whether you'll know anyway. I'm not a Greek scholar. I took Greek. I say, I know a little Greek. He runs a tailor shop down the street. And that's about the way it is. But I am not a Greek scholar. I do have a Greek text, and I have Greek lexicons to look up things. Those lexicons were written in the 1800s, and words change over the year. English words change. It's a living language. And some of their understanding of the Greek text is based on the current 1800 years understanding of that word. And that word in the original, back in the first century, didn't mean that. May have meant something different. But anyway, it's accurate enough that you don't have to worry about any of that. You just read it, and it's all pretty much the same. You'll understand all you really need to. Even the Bible says the secret things belong to God, and the things that are revealed belong to us. Deuteronomy 29:29. And so there are things that we don't know about because God didn't reveal it to us. There you will read things and you'll question this or that, but there is no answer. In the book of Job, Job questioned God about his suffering, and God's answer to Job was, "Who are you to question me?" And there are too many people that think that they're smarter than God and they know better than God knows, or the Word or the Bible knows. But that's not true wisdom. The only true wisdom comes from the Bible. And I've been reluctant to do this kind of streaming because it is controversial, and I'm not a controversial guy. I'm kind of easy to get along with. And I don't get into arguments with anybody. I'm just simply, I can discuss anything with anybody. It doesn't matter what it is, calmly. And so, well, that's my story for today. I read the ESV in January. I finished it in mid-April sometime, and then I began reading the New American Standard Version, updated version. It was updated in 1995, and I finished reading that. And I went back to look for an old King James version, but my King James versions are pretty well ragged and worn out, so I bought a new one. And so I'm reading that one now, and I'm only in Leviticus, the third book right now, but I'll finish before the end of the year. Let's see what questions. I thank you for your comments. These are wonderful. Well, which book of the Bible is my favorite? I don't really have any favorites exactly, but there are certain books that I really enjoy teaching. I enjoy teaching the book of Daniel in the Old Testament. I think it's one of the more fascinating books. And and I don't I've never gotten an opportunity to teach the book of Revelation. Just a second. Last year, after I turned 93, I wrote a commentary on the book of Revelation. It's available on Amazon for about $5, I think. And if you want to read that, well, you can. When I was 40, just by reading the Bible so many times, I thought I had an understanding of the book of Revelation that I'd never heard before. And I mentioned it to a preacher friend of mine, and I told him, I think I'm a heretic because I think I understand the book of Revelation. And he said, well, what do you think about it? And so I began to tell him and talk about it. And he said, well, that's what Foy Wallace Jr. thinks. And if you get Foy Wallace Jr.'s commentary on the book of Revelation, you'll find out it's exactly what I thought at the age of 40, and I'd never read his book, but I did get it and read it. All of my books, by the way, are available on Kindle. Many of them you can get for 99 cents. And I don't think there's any over $2 on Kindle. And so whatever you want to do about that's all right. Let's see here. I don't really know any other languages. I have a working knowledge of Greek, but I'm not fluent in it. I took Greek from a preacher that had a Greek text. He didn't even have a translation. He could read it like he could read English. Well, I have a Kindle too. I often say that I've got so many books in my Kindle that I can hardly pick it up anymore. It's so heavy. And I guess this may be my last one, unless you have other things you want me to talk about. And I might do that. But I've kind of run out of stories. So whatever. You'll have to look back on my live things to find the names of my books. I don't have time to go through all that again today, but I showed each and every book. Well, I didn't show them all. I showed about 6 or 8 because there's about 40 or some odd that I don't recommend. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your comments, and I feel very humbled by your interest. I'm just an old man. I'm not anybody special, but I do love to sing, try to sing. I don't call it singing anymore. I call it try to sing, because every song I record, I think, is that good enough to post? Or I usually say, how bad is it, before I listen to what it sounds like. Well, thank you very much, and perhaps we'll see you later. Goodbye.